We're back.
We're here. It's us. It's me and you. It's Brant Tobler and Andrew Slater. It's another week of Stand Up Explained. We are back in our hometowns. I'm back in Denver. Andrew's back in Portland. Before we get started, today's episode, we're going to talk about what you should watch headliners and give you some ideas on what you should watch. But real quickly up front, we just want to thank everybody for spreading the word. The show's growing. We appreciate all the sweet messages. If you haven't done it yet, please subscribe, rate, review on iTunes, and subscribe on YouTube. And, just tell your friends. That's how stuff grows. So keep telling other comics, because I know you know comics that need some advice. So find a subtle way of saying, hey, your shit could benefit from this.
And even non-comics,
Yeah.
Sometimes people are just curious about stand-up comedy and like to see how the sausage is made. So, send them our way.
Yeah, send them our way, and they'll learn all about stand-up, and then they'll tell you what you should be doing, and you'll wish you never said.
And they'll tell you why they would have been a great comic if they had just
they tell you how funny they are, which they're already telling you anyway, so don't worry about that. But today, we're going to talk about why you should watch headliners, and this is something I did more in the beginning when I was really starting out, but I think I was just enjoying when I should have been studying. Were you studying headliners from the beginning?
Oh, that's a good question. No, probably not. Not like I should have been. I think same thing. I would have comics I really, really liked and wanted to see and just couldn't wait to watch. I'd watch all 4 shows or whatever they were there for. And then there were, even back then though, there were comics I didn't like, and then I just wouldn't watch them.
Yeah.
Which is amazing to think of myself being so snobby. Like I was horrible. Who was I to think somebody else wasn't good? But back then I feel like I was snobbier than I even am now. I think now I have more appreciation for how hard it is. And so even if it's like somebody whose sense of humor isn't necessarily the same as mine, I can like watch and appreciate the craft of it. But back then when I should have been watching everybody, I didn't.
Yeah. That's the thing I kind of wish I would have done more is I really enjoyed watching, I watched a lot of headliners and I enjoyed it, and you should enjoy it, but I wish I would have kind of like analyzed why I enjoyed it. Like maybe in the moment kind of been like, oh, I really like what he did there. I mean, because you don't want to have your phone out or like take notes. That's like the worst thing you do at a comedy show, because then they'll think you're stealing their jokes. But I wish somehow I would have maybe made a few mental notes and been like, because then years later I was like, God, I mean, we talked about it on the last episode about Sebastian. When I opened for Sebastian and he was doing that Ross TJ Maxx bit, I just enjoyed it so much that I didn't realize, man, I could incorporate some of the tricks he's using into my own act. And that was the same with Aziz. I got open for Aziz before he was like a TV star, movie star. And I was so happy just watching him. But in hindsight, I was like, there's a couple tricks in there that he was doing that I could have easily, picked up on.
Yeah. So I think the lesson there is like, for me, the lesson I've learned, it's taken me a long time to learn this, but I think it's a valuable lesson. It's one that I'm happy at least I learned it now, is like you can learn something from anybody who's headlining, even if they're not the greatest or you don't think they're very funny, or if they've been doing comedy long enough to be headlining in that room that you're at, you can probably learn something from them.
Yeah.
About stand-up comedy. And it doesn't mean that you're going to leave and laugh. It doesn't mean that you're even going to enjoy it that much, but it's worth watching at least once just to get an idea of the things that you like and the things that you don't like. Sometimes you can watch people and go, okay, that's great. Oh, I wish I could do it like that. I wish I could be more confident in the crowd work, or look how they start with something about the city and then they easily transition into the material. I wish I could do that better. I should work on that, whatever. But then you could go, oh, I don't like this whole part. I don't like how condescending they're being. I don't like this. I remember watching Daniel Tosh before Tosh.0. He came to Giggles in Seattle, and he was so funny. And I actually paid I just started, but I was too new to like get into the club for free. So I paid to see him, and the room was like pretty full, but he wasn't famous yet. He was like comedy famous, not like he is now. And so the room was like 80% full or something. And I just remember he was so funny, but then at the end he was so like mad at us for it not being sold out. And it was like bitter and kind of angry. You could tell, and it really like came out. And then like you could tell he knew he was supposed to be famous. Like he's so confident and good. He's like he was just annoyed at how long it was taking for him to, And it was really coming out of his set. And I was like, this isn't fun. I feel guilty for
We're
not
not
have
bringing
like
more
rounding
people.
up 50 people to come see Daniel Tosh. And I was like, so I remember thinking that like I don't ever want to make audience members feel like that, So as good as Daniel Tosh is, and as much as I could have, I learned from watching all the other stuff he was doing, there were things I could watch and go, oh yeah, maybe don't do that one
Yeah.
day when I'm a headliner.
Well, and it again, and we're talking simple stuff. There's stuff like you should watch, like intro music. Some guys come out to music, some guys don't. The way some people come on stage, even if it's someone I don't like, I always watch the way they do the check drop. If how they handle that, the way they sell their merch, how they handle that. There's so much just inside comedy stuff that, eventually you're going to get to. Eventually you're going to have a check drop. Eventually you're going to have merch. And I wish I would have taken kind of better mental notes of that kind of stuff, because then it's weird, because then when I got to that point to do a check drop or sell merch, or if they asked me if I wanted a song to come out to, or how I even came out as a headliner, I was like, I don't really know what to do. But I should have been studying that whole time, kind of being like, okay, I like what he did here. That song's perfect, or that song's obnoxious, or he pandered that song to the city he's in, or he, shit like that, that then I could have like really sped up my process. Then instead of when it came, I was like, oh, what do I do? When I should have kind of had an idea of at least what I wanted to do. Now I wouldn't have known. You're still gonna have to learn this shit on the fly, but it would have been, I wish I would have came a little more prepared with like, okay, this is how I'm going to address all this stuff.
Yeah. And again, I think you're right. It's not just like watching great comics, great headliners, and learning how to become a great joke writer. It is all that like nuts and bolts stuff that no one tells you how to do, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
There is no manual for like how to come up with a merch pitch that doesn't sound pathetic.
Yeah.
Which I'm still not good. I should go and watch more comics do their merch pitch, because anytime I try to sell anything, it always devolves into me making fun of myself for how I sound like a charity case.
Yeah.
And so I need to get better at that, or like you said, the check drop or closing. Like, it's good to watch headliners too, because I think a lot of times what happens is comics will feature or host or do a guest spot, and then they'll watch like the first 5 minutes of the headliner, and then they'll go, okay, I got it. And then they'll sneak into the bar and have a beer and maybe talk shit about how the headliner is not that funny or whatever. And it's always so unfair. And I've done that. I'm more guilty of that than anybody on the planet. So I'm trying not to be a hypocrite, but it's unfair to the headliner, because you don't know, like they're going to be up there for an hour, and they might close on like the greatest joke you've ever seen. And you
Yeah.
just you're like, oh, well, I got the gist of it. I saw when they went up there and
Yeah.
made
They
a
just
joke about the last guy. And
you watch them buy the land and you don't even see them build the house, but you're like, this house sucks. But you just
right,
saw the land. You got to,
right,
I'm guilty of it too. It's like, and the more you do comedy, the more of a shitty audience member you'll be. Like, okay, I'm bored with this. Let me go talk about myself and think about myself. But in the beginning, you'll see even stuff like the way they move their stool. It's a great way to see the way people kind of get to their notes, or cheat their notes. Or I think if you really,
drinking. Like we've talked about this on another episode, but I remember watching headliners going, how do you take a drink of your water or beer or whatever on stage without it being the most awkward thing? Like I could never. But just watching the timing of a headliner who's been doing it for 20 years, you go, oh, okay, that's how they sneak in a
Yeah.
glass of water without it looking stupid, or taking I there was a comic, I forget who this was, but I remember it was like in a Seattle comedy contest or something, and they would take off their coat on, they'd get on stage and immediately like just take off their coat, before they said anything, and hang it in their hat carefully on a mic stand. I go, that's a whole move right there, like that is
Yeah.
very confident. And even for a 5-minute set, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
It was
There's
like a little
one,
thing, but
one that I did pick up on early is one time I saw a guy, he had his drink and he had ice in his drink. Maybe it was nerves or whatever, but he took some ice with his drink and then he's chewing ice on stage. And I was like, for that reason, because I'm an ice chewer when I'm just like bored. And I was like, then I made that decision. Like, okay, if I'm going to do I usually do beer or something, but if some chance I had like a mixed drink, I would pour it in like a different cup. Cause I was like, I can't be up there chewing ice into the microphone. It's just a bad, I'm not saying it was a very good headliner. I'm not saying it was at the Comedy Store or something, but even just a little self note like that, like, oh God, I can't be up here chewing ice and stuff. So,
well, and also like you want to see like a real pro, the way they treat the staff and stuff. Like I think every comic now knows, most headliners know to like, when during a check drop or something, to say something appreciative about the wait staff and that people should tip them and all that. But like people only know that from watching other comics do it. Like I said, there's nothing like, it's not like your first week headlining and the comedy club owner goes, hey, and it would be nice if you mentioned to
yeah,
tip your wait staff. And that's like a cliche or whatever, but it is nice. And people
yeah.
do like it. It's like a nice thing to do. And it does, if it even gets $1 more for a waiter or a waitress, then great,
It'll be good for you in the long run. Yeah. So I like watching stuff. I mean, I also like joke structure. And we talked about last episode about moving. I learned a lot about moving from watching, but I think in the beginning I was so focused on their jokes, which is something we'll probably do another episode on, about the dangers of emulating your favorite comic. Like for me, when I started, I watched so much Mitch Hedberg. I was writing, sounding like Mitch Hedberg. It's a thing that happens with like Dave Attell, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know who it is probably now, but
yeah, I think John Mulaney, I think gets a lot.
Yeah.
But I did that for sure. I would go in phases of people.
Uh-huh.
I had like a Letterman phase, then I had I'd listen to old stuff. So I had like a Woody Allen. I was trying to write jokes like Woody Allen, and then I was like, yeah, and then definitely Attell, and definitely, And so the idea though is to watch enough of a diversity of people that not one style,
Yeah.
you're not stealing from one person. You want to steal
Yeah.
from a bunch of people, and so no one can tell who you're stealing from.
Yeah.
Basically,
and
not
we've
jokes, but I just mean like, essence or tricks, or just
tricks. We'll call it tricks. Like there's there's tricks that you can do. But then there's a fine line. Like, so like there's a comic we worked with a bunch, and he stole a guy's closer, a merch thing, which caused a lot of problems.
Right.
And the guy reached out and said, hey, quit doing this. One guy, I mean, we should give him credit. Dan Cummings had like the greatest merch closer ever. And then, but if someone writes something, so like we're saying you should steal like tricks that everyone can use, but you got to be careful of don't steal like a whole merch pitch, right? Is that the...
Yeah, well, and then there's like this is like maybe a whole nother topic, but like I do think there's a fine line between like, oh, someone does this, it's like a public, like when things enter public domain, when they can't be copyrighted anymore. I think that happens in stand-up too. I feel like, people do some line or something and it goes back like 100 years and people have just been doing it forever. And at a certain point, it's like, who's to say who, you can't really claim that. But I do think there are like, you got to be careful because sometimes there are just a specific thing that someone does and it's like a merch pitch or whatever. And it is unique to them and you can't just take that.
But I think that's the good thing about watching a lot of headliners. You'll see what's kind of common domain. You're like, oh, okay, these three guys did this that's a trick. Whereas like you'll see someone do,
and you may not want to do it. You may see, that's another reason to watch headliners. You go, every headliner comes to town, does the same joke. It's like, you know what I don't want to do? That joke.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, because it's
Yeah.
being done.
Yeah. That's what I mean. You always want to. I would always stay away from like anything the same words. Like the more I like, what I'm thinking of. What I wish is, like I said, the movement, the way they did. I mean, like the waitress thing is like kind of can always be public domain, but like I don't know. I'm just the last thing you want to be called is a thief, so you got it.
Right. Well, like again, to me, like stand up is like art and craft, and I think the craft things can be shared and can be taken, and you want to learn like the movement on stage, how you dress, the making eye contact, the tone of voice, mic, using the microphone for effect, all that stuff is like craft stuff. The art of it is the actual jokes, which so you can learn and steal and use craft, I think, but art you want to not ever.
Yeah.
You don't even want to be close with art.
Yeah.
You don't want to be around in the same ballpark. You don't want to be in the same. Once you've heard of it, then you can move on to your own. You can just move on. You don't.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect analogy. The craft and then the art when it's.
But I wanted to say one more thing before I forget it, because I always forget stuff when we do this, and I go, "Oh man, I forgot to say that." The reason to watch a headliner, if they're there for a weekend, you want to watch more than one show, because then you're like, well, I watched their whole set. Sometimes that happens too. Like, I watched their whole set. It was fine, or it was really great. It was hilarious, but I saw it. Try to watch more than one show at least, because what's interesting is you can see the changes. So like, even if you watch like early show Friday, late show Saturday, look how much different stuff they're doing by late show Saturday, early show Friday. Or maybe they're doing the exact same show. Or they had like some local joke they started with early show Friday and they added a bunch of tags to it by the late show Saturday. Or they're just working on jokes in the middle and things have changed. I mean, that's a good barometer for like, well, wait, how much would I change? How much would my set change between 4 shows? And how much is a headliner set changing between 4 shows? And is that why they're producing material faster?
Yeah, that's a great point. They'll change the order. That's when as you grow, you'll get lucky enough. Hopefully, when you get a watch as a host or headliner, that's when you should really, when you get a host or feature for a headliner, that's when you really get the chance to watch somebody. And it'll go both ways. You'll be like, man, this motherfucker did word for word Thursday all the way to late Saturday. And you'll be like, that sucks. That's because, it goes back to even like what we talked about with the staff. Those are the kind of guys, the staff like, oh, this sucks. We know, like it's more inspiring.
Year too. It's like, oh, they came last year and I can tell you exactly the jokes they're going to do this year,
Yeah. So, but hopefully you'll get some opportunities to host or headline. I mean, host or feature, and that's a good time to watch. And if you are watching, it's so much. That's how you start a connection with a headliner. Trust me, when I headline and I know someone's watching, or the times when I host or feature for someone and I sit side stage and watch, they know I'm there, and they definitely. It's a different conversation in the green room after, because you can go. Then you're talking comedy. Then you're in their world, And a mistake I made early on was doing just what you said. I'd watch 5 minutes, then I would go, and then after the show, I just wasn't. They knew I was invested in their act, and we didn't invest in a start of friendship, which is very valuable.
Well, and then you do make this selfish assumption. You're like, well, because when you're featuring, especially, you're assuming everyone's watching everything you do. And then you're going to blow them out. Like, oh, they're going to think I'm so funny. And then you watch 5 minutes of them and you stop watching. It's like, well, what do you think they're doing with you? You think they're watching your set? Like that is like, if you want people to watch you, you probably should at least watch the headliner. But
that's a good barometer too. I've learned that lesson of times I thought I killed it. And then I was like, oh, what? Let's see him follow this. And then they just destroy. And I go, okay, that's where the benchmark is. I got to get I got to get better because that is how you do it.
I'm so glad you brought that up because that is so true. There are like I started in this club that was sort of unique in that they'd either have like Greg Giraldo or Patrice O'Neill or you know
Tosh.
Tosh. I mean, they'd even have someone like that who was just top of their game, killing, or they would have like budget weekend. Here's 6 open micers who are doing pretty good this week. They call it the All-Star Weekend. So it's like it was either boom or bust. Every weekend was like, huge budget or no budget at all. So we do these All-Star Weekends. We'd think we're hot shit. We were like, oh, Friday night I did 20 minutes. I did pretty good, and you think how do you get funnier than that? I mean, I got laughs the whole time. That's as good as you can do, And then you'd see Giraldo come in and it would just change your whole definition for what doing good even is. So that's another reason to watch headliners. And then also, so I'm glad you brought that up, but then the other thing, there's like nuts and bolts reasons to watch too, especially if you're hosting or featuring, but you just want to know what they're talking about too. Like, you don't want to just be doing, because you might have a bit that's close, or you might talk about DiGiorno pizza in a chunk, and then they have a punchline that's DiGiorno, you know what I mean? And you just want to watch. And I think, honestly, I think a headliner should adjust before a feature does, just because they probably have more material and all that. But you don't want to like really step on toes if you don't have to. And or it's just good to be aware of it at least. And so that's another reason to watch, just to know what they're talking about.
Yeah. There's been times when I was featuring, I had, like a similar bit, and then theirs was just way better. I was like, why do I tarnish this for him? Like, and plus there'll be headliners say, get rid of that bit. But if it's like, it is good to just watch and be like, it is just a lot of advantage. If you really take the time to watch, you're going to pick up a lot of, like you said, the nuts and bolts, and it's just a good part of growing. It's like, if you want to be a basketball player, I remember all I want to do is go to the NBA growing up. And then I would watch all the basketball, and it's somewhere along the comedy, you get a little cocky and you have a good set and you think it's more important to go stand outside and talk to the 4 people that are going to go to the bathroom during the headliner set and be like, hey, good job. But it's like, you should think long-term. Don't sacrifice those 4 little pats on the back when you could be learning from someone incredible that'll sell out. You'll help you sell out shows one day. You'll get all the pats on the back.
Yeah. And like, I think early on too, I watched, so I kind of went in spurts where I'd watch everything and then I would watch nothing. I was either watching everybody and watching all 4 shows, or I got cocky and I would do my set and then immediately go back in the bar and talk to comics or the crowd or whatever. And I think part of what happened was I was worried about, I would watch everything, and including specials and CDs, and I just consume as much stand-up as possible. But then you get worried that it's influencing you too much. And then, so then I tried to cut that out. I tried to not watch as much. Yeah. But then a certain thing, I don't know when this happened, but not even that long ago, I realized like I missed it. Like I was like, I miss watching stand-up. You know, I got so used to like just focusing on my own thing, doing it as best as I could, keeping my head down. And then, but I wasn't like watching a ton of specials. I wasn't watching that as many comics as I normally would on a show. And I've tried to make an effort to go back to that. And it's like, it's really fun. It's probably why either you're a fan of it or you're doing it, but it's probably why you're one of those things, is that it's fun, you know? And so it's like, enjoy it. It's one of the perks.
I mean, that's a great point about watching specials. So let's say like here at Comedy Works, if you're a young comic, you probably aren't going to be able to go watch the headliner unless you buy a ticket. But everyone that came through has a Netflix special. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being like, you could put on a Netflix special and watch something and go, this is my favorite bit. And then just rewind it and go, let's really watch, the first time you enjoy it, and then just rewind it and go, you can do that countless times without spending money or be in the back of the room or
right.
The craziness of a comedy club. When we started out, there was like, they'd put a couple specials on HBO. I couldn't even, we didn't even have HBO. So honestly, now, as you were saying that, I was just thinking there's really whoever your favorite comic is or favorite couple comics, you should go on and watch it. And then even like maybe Seinfeld's not your favorite, but he just put out that special. I don't think, I mean, he's just he has this shit down to a science, like numbers. I wouldn't mind just watching that just to see why he does some of the things he does. You know, you have that advantage now of having every special in the world on Netflix.
And I watched the Seinfeld special because, like I said, I'm back in this mode now where I'm trying to watch, and I'm less worried about being influenced now. That's the other thing. It's like I'm pretty, I've been doing this for a long time, so I'm pretty settled into who I am on stage and my voice, and I'm not as worried about like I'm gonna watch somebody I like and then start talking like them on stage or something. So. Plus, I have been watching a ton more stand-up. And the Seinfeld one, I think, I'm not going to speak for you, but I bet it's a perfect example of you being able to watch something and going, there's some stuff that I love that I think is great and that I could learn from and I could learn how to do. And then there's some stuff where it's goes, okay, but then that's the stuff I don't want to do. It's like,
yeah.
And you can do that with every comic, but the Seinfeld one, I think, is a great example of that because he's such a master and he kills so hard, and it's like, we'll never be, most 99.9999% of people will never reach that level of how good he is at it. But then there's still things that go, well, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to be that. So I think it's worth watching.
Yeah. And it goes back to, I mean, this will go back to all the stuff we talked about, moving on stage, dressing on stage, all of that stuff. We talked about on the dressing episode, like watch guys that you think Seinfeld, he's probably in a 3-piece suit on that.
Yeah.
And you're
going to learn, you're watching this podcast or listening to this podcast. And it's like, presumably because you want to learn something about stand-up, right? But you're going to learn more from watching headliners, hopefully in person, but even on TV, than you probably are from listening to any podcast or reading any book or whatever,
Yeah. Well, I will say that as much as I just encourage the Netflix thing, you want to see it in person, you'll definitely learn.
You want to see it live. Yeah.
The live,
and it's more like, I think we're more saying like, if you have the opportunity, I'm not saying you have to like spend every penny you have on live comedy, but it's like, if you have the opportunity, don't waste it. Cause like I've wasted a million opportunities to watch great comics on stage because I just was like, it's more important for me to be in the bar. Maybe it's more important, but I get fatigued by stand-up. It's like, I've seen it all, or I'm cocky, or, there's a million reasons. And
but I think I do what you do too. Watch some, then come pull back some, and then crave it again, and then pull back some. But I think that the main thing is watching that first part till you get tired of it, burnt out. Then you could pull back, but not.
Yeah.
When I started, I just pulled back. I thought I was too cool, and I thought I was too good, and I thought I was above watching people win. I'm just like you. I was surrounded by incredible comics that I could have learned so much from, but I had my head up my own ass too much and I missed those opportunities.
And give them more than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I remember I saw Greg Fitzsimmons one time at Bumbershoot, and I'd never seen him before. And he started out at the beginning, and he's kind of talking about Seattle, talking about the festival. He's reading off of notes, and it was just all new stuff. And it was all right. He was funny, but then you're like, kind of like, oh, it's like, how long is he doing? You know what I mean? It's like, he's got another 25 minutes. I don't know. And then he did everything on the sheet and just quietly folded it, put it in his pocket, and just demolished the next 20. Just like, and you could tell, like, he's like, all right, I'm done fucking around for the rest of the set, Yeah. And I was like, it was it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something you'll see. That's a great point. So many great comics do that where they'll fuck around the first 5 minutes and then they'll go, okay, I think you're ready.
There's a confidence of knowing it. You have it. I remember Dana Gould said that one time. He's like, I've got it in the back pocket. Don't worry. He's like, you're worried about it. He told us, he was like, you're worried about how am I going to follow this bit? He's like, I've got it. I've got it right back here. I've got it in my back pocket. Don't worry. And it's like, when you see comics who have it in the back pocket, it's really fun.
Yeah. And it's inspiring. That's another thing. You like, oh, I love seeing Dana Gould. I want to fill up my back pocket. That's something I didn't even know. That's not a
Right.
term I've ever heard of, but I'm sure it's something that stuck with you. Like, man, I got to keep working because I'd love to have that back pocket full, because that's a whole, you walk a little different when that back pocket's full.
Yeah.
Because when you got that back
Yeah.
full, it's full of money.
Because I've walked with nothing in my pockets before.
Yeah.
And it's a much daintier walk. It's a much more nervous.
Yeah. I think I told the crowd before, you should worry because there's nothing in these back pockets.
You think there's something else coming? There's not. This is it. So
yeah. So yeah, I would enjoy, and there's so many benefits to it. I can't really even find a negative to it. You know
what you just said though is important. We hadn't talked about that before, but inspiration. Like,
yeah,
sometimes you need a shot of like, oh, this is how good it can get. This is how, especially if you live in a city that you're not seeing, where it's a smaller town and maybe you don't see like a ton of nationally touring comics all the time. It's like you can kind of forget how good it can be,
Yeah. Well, here's the thing I just thought of. So let's say you buy a ticket to see one of your favorite comics. So you're sitting, let's say, 4th row, and he comes to you on crowd work. You just totally, like, I think I made the mistake a couple of times early, being like, I'm also a comic, and trying to be too funny and shit. Then it's happened other times. I mean, it could happen right now. Nobody knows me. Like, I've set side stage, and someone came to me, and then I was just like, they're like, what do you do? I was like, oh, I'm just a teacher. What you talked about earlier on the crowd works, how you shut down crowd work.
Yeah.
What do you do? Teacher.
Investment banker.
Then after and then they rip me and I just take it. I'd never try to upstage the headliner. This is a rare thing but it'll probably happen to you at some point. And then after the show, I'd come over and go, hey, that was awesome. I'm a comic, but I'm not that kind of douche to try to out comic you. And that was another way we just built rapport of like, but that's a mistake I've seen comics make of like, you go see your favorite, but then you don't try, just wear it on the chin one time. Trust me, that's not your chance to show your hero how funny you really are.
Well, what that makes me think of is, I think you know this story, but I actually got to see Don Rickles live before he died.
Which is awesome.
I went with my buddy Mike Cummings. I don't know if we brought up on here before, but he's a comic, and Rickles pointed him out. I forget how it even happened, but we got good seats. And he pointed at Mike and was like, what does you do? And I was like, in my head, I was like, oh, please don't say you're a comic, But he said, wait, he's smart. Mike's not stupid. So he said he's a waiter. But then he actually got called up on stage. Rickles does a thing where he brings up a bunch of people and he kind of goes down the line making fun of them or whatever. But then I think Mike did say later, he was like, because he said, what do you do? He was like, I'm a waiter. And then Rickles just immediately was like, well, what do you really want to do?
Yeah.
And so then he said he was a comic and he made fun of him, but then he said something inspiring too. So
yeah.
But yeah, it just made me think of that story.
Well, I had it happen one time. I was walking, we were at the Comedy Cellar, and to get to the bathroom of the Comedy Cellar, you have to walk by the stage. And we come out of the bathroom, me and my buddy, who's not a comic, and Jeff Ross and Attell are on stage, and they see us just like fucking just plants, just like snipers. They see just 2 dudes coming out of the bathroom a little drunk, and they just start firing at us. And my buddy starts to like stop, and I was like, head down. I'm not going to say I'm a con, nothing. I just said, just go. Like it was a fire drill. I was like, yeah. And in my younger days, I'd have been like, try to be, which would have been disaster, but it's like, if you do go to the shows, it might happen to you 1 out of 1,000 times, but it definitely happened to me a couple times. Or I remember sometimes as a comic, you get to be like a shitty laugher because you're maybe analyzing what they're doing. So even if I sit up front now, I'll even kind of fake laugh just to not be that.
Oh yeah. I have to tell myself to laugh sometimes. Like I have to go, this is kind of sad to say it out loud, but it's sort of true. You just consume too much comedy. I have to have my brain go, oh, that's actually really funny. And then it's like, you should smile and laugh.
Yeah.
Like I have to like tell myself to do all that.
My girlfriend, she'll point it out all the time. Like, oh, here comes that laugh. I'm like, babe, we're supporting the headliner. I mean, it's like, and it's not, even if it's bad or good, but it's just like, it's just weird things that just made me think of like so many times starting out going to watch people or just going to watch, there's other times when I was fortunate in Vegas, it was easy to go into rooms and watch. And so I would just go watch but I was too thinking about myself. Like, could I be that funny, or I'm funnier than that? Like, I never was smart enough to be like, really appreciate what I was watching and see how it could help me. When I was starting out, I just thought I was too good. And I just came as like a dick measuring contest. So I would just go and be like,
Right.
all right, how funny is he or she or whoever, you know? And that was another thing. When I started, I was that douche that didn't think women are funny till I just saw them destroy
Right.
and just crush me every single time. So I'm not just saying men, women too. There's so many incredible women that I just didn't.
There is a weird thing when you're starting out too, where you almost don't want them to be that good.
Yeah. Well,
You don't want to believe that it's possible to be as good as some of these headliners are, because all that's going to make you think is like, oh shit,
Yeah.
I am screwed.
Well, yeah, that's true.
I've thought that so many times. Now I think that watching some comics, I'll be like, oh god damn it, are you serious?
Yeah. But again, that's a time
it ups your game. It forces you.
Yeah, that's a time to maybe even on our level watch and go, wait, why is, I remember this last time Andrew Schultz came through and he just had it. And I just watched everything from what he did social media wise off stage, where he had people filming, how he did. I mean, I learned a lot from him. I've probably been doing it a year or two. I don't know how long he's doing it. We're probably we're not on the same career path, but on the same timeline. But I really, even just watching him, I was like, oh man, he's doing shit I didn't even think about, or I should try to incorporate something like this into, you can always learn from any headliner if you like them or you don't. I agree with you on that. It's like, you don't just have to go see Attell. There's people that we've worked with that would blow your fucking mind and you've never heard of them,
And you would think, you're like, well, that's not for me or whatever. But yeah, I think totally the biggest takeaway is you can learn from everybody.
Yeah.
And even if you don't think they're funny, there's something that they're doing that you could probably learn from.
I mean, I saw Dice Clay and he was the worst thing I ever seen, but I learned a lot. Like, I just hated everything about it, but I might have learned more of from that night. Or I remember, the first time I saw Charlie Murphy, when it was like after Chappelle, and I think he just riding the Chappelle way, but he was so bad. And I was like, I learned a lot I was like, he was doing everything bad. I was like, oh God, I'll never do these three. Why would he do these three things?
Right. And it reinforces, like, there's nothing that reminds me to do certain things, like watching someone not do it well. Like, if you ever see a comic not move the mic stand out of the way and do their whole set in front of the mic stand, all you have to do is see someone do that once and you go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I better not ever leave the mic stand in front of me, because that looks like the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you're not, you're getting a reminder. You're not learning. You're just like, oh yeah. Okay. I almost forgot about that. Yeah. We don't want to do that.
Right. Yeah.
We don't want it even close to us on the side. He moved a little. Let's bury that thing in the back of the
stage.
Get
that thing out of the way.
And then you see somebody you like walk out, grab that bitch, take it right to the back, and then you're like, oh yeah, that's all right. Let's remember that. So yeah, we'll wrap it up with that. That's just go watch headliners, learn. There's so many great ones. I think this is a great era of stand up, so you can always learn, and that's that. Anything else?
No.
Yeah, come when we're headlining, come watch us.
Yeah, come watch us.
Ticket sale.
Pay. Bring your friends.
Bring a bunch of friends, or we'll be mad.
I'm gonna be bitter like Tosh was.
Yeah, that's the last thing. Please come watch us headline, because
Why am I not famous?
We want to be more famous. But no, that's it for this week. Thank you guys for listening. Please subscribe, rate, review, tell your friends, and we'll please leave any comments. What you want us to talk about, or if you have any questions that we missed on this episode, and we'll either personally get back to you or discuss them in another episode. So we're loving this ride. I'm having fun. I love talking to Andrew. Talking comedy every week is awesome. So we'll keep doing it.
Every time we talk about a subject, it's great, because then I go, there's like 10 more things it makes me think about with stand-up that I hadn't thought about in a while. So
yeah, just keep your comedy brain working. If you're not listening to us, Go watch headliners, read, do keep that creative comedy brain working. So we'll be here for you every week. So we'll sign off for now. I'm Brant Tobler.
I'm Andrew Slater.
See ya.
See ya.